Hi everybody, and welcome to our Tausken review. Today I'll be reviewing The Dark Pictures The Devil in Me, which is the latest in Supermassive's anthology series known as The Dark Pictures. As the season final of The Dark Pictures Anthology, there's a lot riding on this game. It has a lot to measure up to try and beat the first three games. If you've never played the first three, you might honestly be better off starting with one of them first before playing this game. Each one is a standalone game, but ultimately you might get a better experience out of just playing the other ones in order. Much like Supermassive's other games, Until Dawn, The Quarry, and all the other Dark Pictures games, The Devil in Me is basically a choose your own adventure narrative game. There's small sequences of exploring environments, short puzzles, quick time events, and others, but a lot of the game will be spent broken up in different dialogue and cutscenes. Like the other games, you do get some agency in choosing the outcomes. Characters will basically live or die depending on your choices, which gives you as the player a lot of agency, and it's one of the more fun parts of the Supermassive games they've been making recently. Being able to see what your choices do, what kind of outcome you get, and comparing it and contrasting it to a friend who plays the game. As a whole, I found The Devil in Me kind of a bit refreshing in some areas, but also very flawed. The Devil in Me takes the series back to a more grounded roots than what we found in, say, Man of Medan, Little Hope, or House of Ashes. It loses a lot of the fantastical and cosmic horror stuff that were found in those games for a much more grounded traditional Halloween story. Something like what you'd get out of Halloween or a more traditional experience. I'd even compare it in some ways to being a lot more similar to, say, Until Dawn than it is compared to the last three Dark Pictures games. The story itself, I'd say, is okay. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's definitely a good ride, but it's much like a B or C tier story. It definitely doesn't compare to, say, like Man of Medan or Little Hope, I'd say, honestly. The characters themselves are kind of boring and generic. I didn't really find that there was enough time really spent getting to know them that I cared enough about them when they were actually on the line to die, and this kind of hampers a bit of some of the gameplay experience as a result. It's just a bit of a bummer because ultimately these games are narratively driven story experiences, and I didn't really find the characters or the story that was going on was really that amazing. Where The Devil in Me really started to lose me was the lack of polish. The game clearly was rushed. I had twice to restart the game because it crashed. I had the game get stuck twice as well, where I had to reload from a checkpoint because my character suddenly couldn't move. Sometimes characters will be looking off in weird directions, clearly not animated correctly, or the lighting's off, and it's just strange. It's like there's so many sequences that were clearly under polished that really should have been done better, especially for a narrative driven game. It's very important that your animations, your characters, your movements, your interactives, your sequences all have to look really good to really draw the player into the experience. There's also some weird parts like the voice acting syncing not looking right, or sometimes characters' eyes will just be like looking straight up, completely not even looking at the character they're talking to, or you'll be walking and then your character's head will just like turn around completely in the opposite direction. It's just super strange. Worst of all, one of the unique parts of the Dark Pictures is the co op feature, being able to play it with a friend together, as you can share a story and have effects on one another's gameplay. However, the co op gameplay here is a mess. There's so many areas where like it got out of desync and me and a friend were in completely different areas, but we saw the character in another, or our character would be like levitated in the air or stuck in a goofy animation. It just completely drags you out of the immersive experience and is super buggy. So many issues with desync and animations not playing correctly. Ultimately, I don't think The Devil in Me is a bad game, but it's just not quite as solid as the other ones. It's like a hard 6 out of 10. It does have some areas where it does improve on, say, House of the Ashes, which House of the Ashes was like much more of a coherent, solid game, but it was more of like an action adventure. It didn't really have as much horror to it, which this game definitely harkens back to, which is great. But ultimately, polish wise, this game is just a mess. So many bugs, glitches, areas where they clearly ran out of time and couldn't animate things properly or finish things. It's just an embarrassment. This game is a hard 6 out of 10, which is a disappointment because this game is supposed to be the season final. And especially given that they're charging more for this game than they were for the other three, is a real bummer and really drags this game down a bit, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, despite it paining me a bit, I can't really recommend this game right now. I think down the road, as they start to get patches and start to fix things a little bit, and if you can get it on a sale, it's going to be much more worthwhile. So, yeah, guys, that's it for The Devil in Me. We'll see you on the next Toscan review.